Hello guys, in this video we will learn about the boolean helper. So we are going to create a method that checks whether a value passed in is boolean or boolean equivalent. So for example, if you check for is true and then you pass it a value where value equals either true or 1, true as a string, 1 as a string, then you evaluate all these values to true. Now if you pass this value in, then you will get it as is true. So you don't need to convert and try to find out whether the true is true. You want to check whether these values are true. Then possibly you can also add yes, y, no, n as caps or small letters, and then you can check is true. But we're going to check whether value equals true or 1, true as string or 1 as string. Now you can check with permissive is true, and then you check the value. If the value is within those four values, then you evaluate is it true as true, then the return type will be true. However, in the right hand side version of is true, where the assert is true, this means if the value that is not falls within those four values, then throw an exception. The exception will say the value passed in is not a boolean because you only consider those as booleans. You can use this is true as permissive, then you pass it a value, and if you pass the value as John Doe, it will return false. However, if you pass a John Doe here in this version and you set the assert as true, then you will get an exception saying this John Doe is not a boolean value because the boolean value is not one of those four values, which is true 1, true 1 as strings. Now you can use this method also to check whether is false, and then the is false will be false, 0, false as string, and 0 as string. We are going to use this method to create a boolean helper to check whether a value passed in as true or false. Let's go ahead and start that. So I created a helper. A helper class is inside the PHP training namespace. So the first of all I created is the true values. So I defined the values to be supposed to be as true. So these are true, 1, true as string, false as string. The other value I created is the false values. These values are accepted as false, which is false, 0, false as string, and then 0 as string. Now I have a helper method, private method, and it's assert boolean. It will check whether the value is given is within those values. If it is within those values, then it will accept it. If it is not within those values, it will throw an exception saying the value provided is not a boolean. I will use this method whenever the user specify the assertion must be done when checking the value is true or is false, and here is the method that checks it. So the method is called is true, and then you pass the value, and then there is a flag called assert, and it's switched off by default. If this passed in as true and the value is found to be outside the range of the boolean values, which are those the true values and false values because they are merged together, and if it is outside those values, then it will throw an exception. If it is not, it will continue and then it will return whether it's true or not. If assert is false, it will not check and it will not throw an exception if it is not within the range. So if you check whether is true, it will return false or true, but if this is switched on, then it will throw an exception. The same technique is being applied to is false, so it will give you whether the value given is false or not. Now this is the class and it's being used in a function, and this is the function file. I will check first if PHP training function defined. If not, it will define it and add one. This is just to whenever you call for the is true, it will just call for it and it's not trying to create the method every time you call for it. So it's only created once. And now the is true is just an alias of helper is true, and is false is just an alias of helper is false, just to make it easier in terms of user experience. So you are trying to use it, you only need to use the method and you don't need to call the static method and import the class. To use it, we have this function file. We have auto-loaded the files, so it's loaded as functions. So you can auto-load it, and then you run the composer dump autoload. It will auto-load it when you call for it. Now in the shell, I will try to make use of these methods. So if I call vardum is true, this should give me true. So if I go to the terminal and then run the script, it will give me a true. If I go all the way down here, so I'll convert this to string and then I give it 1. So we have true, 1, true as string, 1 as string. If we run the shell, it will give me all true. However, if I go here and say y, it should give me false because this won't be found within those 4 values we specified in the helper class. So if I run it, it will give me a false. We have got false on the y, but if I specify to assert that this value must be within those values, I can just pass here true, and this should throw an exception. So if I run it again, you can see a run give me true, and then it will throw an exception. Value provided is not boolean, and this is exactly what the message said in the assert boolean. Value provided is not boolean, and you would make it like a strict and it should accept only those values, or you can have it as permissive and you just have this as false. And this also applies the same with the is false. So if we go vardum, so if we just comment those, then we say is false, they say false, and we go all the way down 4 values. This is 0, this is string, and this has 0 as string. So if I run it again, it will give me all true because these are false, so it returns all true as they are false. However, if I say here true, sorry, not this one, if I have a new one and then call n, this will give me a false because the n is not within the false values. Now I get false. If I make it strict, it will throw an error and it says value provided is not boolean. I hope this is helpful, and if you like it, please subscribe, and I'll see you in next video.